I have here Elyse, who is also my high school mate, who I've known since age of 13. That was more than 20 years ago. And and she specializes in chemical. She was trained as a chemical engineer and then joined BASF, subsequently to Sika. And that's not the main thing. It's kind of we started our businesses almost the same time back in 2016, 17-ish period.
Yeah.
We were hopping around cafes, same goes to you, right? And then
Yeah.
after that, we decided to settle down in one office in nature. After
Yeah.
that, we even moved to another office together. So I think we shared a lot of time together. Kind not really. Even though in the same office, sometimes you're in, I'm not
We
in.
don't talk.
So it's quite interesting that how you guys have built up your business, subsequently, and it's really interesting for us ourselves, even myself being in the construction industry. I really want to know more about waterproofing because waterproofing is such a vague industry where someone will tell you this, another person will tell you that. I think we're not so much of talking about advising what you should do to your toilet, what you should do to your roof lah. What we can speak about is a lot of the insights and the back end of what you view the construction industry as now, right?
Yeah.
So, um, maybe I can start off with like a quick question about yourself. Like, what got you from chemical engineering into Sika and BASF, and what have you learned from those years, and those companies coming to what you do today?
I actually started in BASF as a management trainee. So, if you guys are not familiar with BASF, basically they are a German company that manufactures all types of chemicals. So, they have a large number of industries that they are very active in. So, as a management trainee, I was very lucky that I got to experience a lot. So, not just construction, but like agriculture, paints and pigments, manufacturing. Sorry, I got brain freeze. Yeah. So throughout that time, basically when we were going around through different industries, of course, construction chemicals is one of them that I was involved in, and I was very, very interested because construction chemicals is something much more physical. Because I think in chemistry class, for example, you see a lot of things that are very abstract, like a transparent liquid mixed with another transparent liquid. You can't really see, but
Mm,
construction is very physical. You see it being built, and at the end of the day, you feel a bit of accomplishment because you know you played a part in a particular building being built. So that's where I started getting a bit more interested in construction. Then from there, I moved over to Sika, which they are also one of the biggest players in globally for construction materials. So they do a lot of like waterproofing, tile adhesive, coatings, and so on. At that time, I was in charge of a lot of mortar products, meaning cementatious based materials. And after that, actually moved on to DriTech, which is where I am now.
So just now you mentioned cementatious and all. I think that's something I really want to get a clearer idea of what cementatious is, solvent based, water based, right? That kind of stuff, right? So I understand there are many projects that you guys undertook before and undertake right now as well. SP Setia, Sime Darby, you've done like TRX Bridge, you do a lot of coating for these infrastructures, right? So what is one project that actually stand out to you that actually you know give you that sort of satisfaction that it's actually working well based on the type of products you guys specify?
I think something maybe a success story that's more relatable, perhaps,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe you guys also have used
Yeah.
it before, is our toilet waterproofing system.
Mm.
So when we're talking about cementatious materials and stuff like that, so basically, if we were to categorize waterproofing, we can kind of put it to maybe three or four main categories. So one of it would be a cementatious based material, basically something that is cement mixed with water, or we call it latex if there's the second part.
Is this something very common that most contractors will buy off the shelf in a hardware store?
Yeah, it's pretty available. It's one
Mm.
of the more economical, I think, options.
Mm.
That's why traditionally, or even right now in the market, a lot of toilets are still using cementatious materials for
Mm.
waterproofing. That's one type. Second type would be liquid applied.
Mm.
So basically whatever that comes in a pail. Yeah, that in liquid form. So those are liquid applied. Another type would be preformed membranes. So like if you see on like there's a lot of videos on like Facebook ads, Instagram ads of people burning stuff. So those like torch on membranes or they come readily in a sheet. So those are a form of preformed membranes. And the last type would be more of like integral waterproofing where you mix into the concrete itself.
Oh,
Yeah, so those are a different type.
so that's not the last one you mentioned is not something you can see with your
Yeah.
naked eye already.
Yeah, it's probably something that they do during construction itself.
Right.
Yeah, so that aside, our toilet waterproofing system is actually liquid applied. So, like what I mentioned just now, a lot of current market practices are using cementatious material. But I
Which
mean,
is in the powder form. Like, it
yeah,
looks like
that's right.
cement powder.
Yes, but they will need to manually mix it at site. So you have to really, really have good workers
With
or good
you-
supervisors.
You create a ratio that is right.
Yes, if you don't use the right ratio, basically you are not getting that that performance that you need.
Yeah.
And we've also seen some projects like really, really large notable projects that we were probably supplying something else, but we did see the waterproofing works done by others. So a lot of people don't really know how waterproofing is actually supposed to be done. We've actually went to a site where it was using a cementatious material, but there was no thickness at all. So for cementatious waterproofing material, you can imagine after you apply, there is
Some
going
sort
to
of
be a
thickness,
sort of
right?
thickness, right? Yeah, like maybe I mean that particular project, I don't even think that was 1 mm. It just looked like a layer of coating that was applied on top with a little bit of color shade difference, and then they just call it a day lah. So we see a lot of things like this at site and realize that actually it's very, very the QA/QC part is a pain, I would say. From how they apply, what what materials are they actually using. We've heard people telling stories like the most precious thing that they have is the bag, that particular waterproofing packaging, because people actually use it one time, they keep the bag, and the workers will actually put in just regular cement in, and then they bring it into site. So
Wow.
yeah, it's very hard to actually test the particular material that is already installed into the
Right,
bathroom, and later on you're going to cover it with tiles and so on.
Wow.
But all these type of things are what really makes us move away from cementatious waterproofing for toilets. So that's why we actually have a liquid based one. I think you've used it as well. It's
WP
20.
20.
Yeah,
Right.
it's bluish green in color. So at least when you apply, the clerk of work or even the homeowners, if it's a renovation project, you can see clearly whether enough material is applied or not, that the right thing is being applied and so on. So yeah, I think that's one of our success stories, and I think this story translated well into a lot of people's practical experience. So we're quite proud that we actually supplied to more than, I think at the moment already more than 1,000 houses easily. Yeah, to projects like under SP Satya and IMP, and recently Sime Darby as well. Yeah. So that's one of the success stories that we are actually quite proud of.
So one way, people talk about the assurance that you're getting waterproofing, right? You will never know until you start laying out your tiles and then you start using a toilet, right? I feel that a lot of clients that we work with, they're not aware of this whole water bonding test that comes with a picture, or the angle filler, right? That you taught me about a few weeks back, and also the height of the coverage of where the waterproofing stops, or how many layers or how many days it takes for it to settle. So, how, from your point of view, how do you imagine this can be better educated to the masses, rather than, because like you say, there's so many ads going on saying you could be using torch on membrane, you could be using cementatious, where back when I started, before we were using your product, we were using like Sika 107, which is, it seems to be one of the notable brands. But and then I started to realize that there are many ranges just from Sika itself. People will never really know which exactly to go with, the right?
I think this has been always a problem, education, basically educating the public about it. But I think if you are renovating your own home and you're not from this background, the only thing I can say is listen to more people. Like, don't just listen to me, don't just listen to one particular contractor, but try to meet more people, or research a little bit more into different companies, and then form your own opinion and form your own understanding on it. I think there is no easy way to ensure, I mean, not just waterproofing, but anything, like, I mean, in when you do your projects as well, there's so many different kind of things that go
Traits, right?
into to creating a successful project, right? And if a homeowner really wants to be hands-on, I think this is an inevitable part where they need to spend time studying.
Yeah. Then how would you say some of the steps that we can actually take to overcome like the applicator, right? So I think this is a very sensitive gap
Yeah.
between bridging what's in that bag or in the pill versus what's being applied on site. How do you all manage that?
For us personally, we have a list of trained and approved applicators. So applicators that we know we can trust. We know they have the expertise to do it, to carry out the project well. But of course, that's not to say that we totally ban everybody else from using the product. But rather when it comes to larger projects, or if the homeowner has a very big concern on it, or if the area is very critical, we do advise to approach these trained and approved applicators. Especially if there's, for example, warranties that are required. Yeah.
Like you use a lot of liquid form application, right? So I got to know that what you apply in the toilet may not be the same when you apply on a concrete roof
Yeah.
externally, and may not also be the same if you were to apply something different on the wall externally. Like, what are the very surface? Wouldn't want to go too technical. What what are the differences and material application that you would recommend? How how should someone that's very layman want to first understand about this?
First thing, you can actually go to whatever material that you're actually planning to use or interested in using. You can go and check out their technical data sheets. Read through exactly what they recommend. Do they recommend it for certain purposes or not? A thing about liquid applied materials is that you got to be careful whether it's UV resistant or not.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
So that's something new again.
So I mean, if you are not using a UV resistant material, then you need to cover the waterproofing with something, a screeding, or if
So
you
what
want to do
happens if it's
tiling.
exposed to UV?
Basically it will degrade over time.
Right.
Yeah.
So the WP20 that you mentioned just now, yeah, it's gonna be used right under the tiles, right?
Yes.
So you're not. Can you use it outdoors?
You can use it outdoors, but we wouldn't really recommend it for large, like huge roofs.
Oh,
So if you're talking
huge.
about like shopping malls, for example, so we wouldn't use WP20 for that. We will have something a bit more elastic and probably reinforced with fiber.
Okay.
Yeah, to create a better tensile strength for the whole waterproofing layer
Okay.
for areas like that.
And then after that, you add another layer of cement screed,
Yeah, if it's not UV resistant.
if it's not UV resistant lah.
If it
So
is, then you can
typically,
just
if we
leave
can
it.
imagine from a very basic level of layers lah, you have the first layer of concrete being your concrete roof, and then you have the application of this waterproofing, and then another cement screed.
Yeah.
Best to be done that way lah.
Yeah. Or otherwise, if it's UV resistant, then if the concrete condition is fine, then you can just straight away apply the
Oh,
waterproofing.
okay, okay. But most importantly, it has to have that elasticity that comes with the material.
Elasticity and tensile strength. I would say mainly these two things lah, because so one of the things when we are talking about waterproofing, what we are really afraid of is cracks. Because concrete by nature it will shrink, it will form cracks. So how well can your waterproofing material actually bridge these cracks?
Yeah.
So if you have something very very elastic but you don't have the strength, the moment your concrete starts to crack, while the waterproofing may be elastic, it doesn't have enough strength to withstand that. Then it will just tear along with it.
Oh.
Yeah, but if you have something that you don't have that elasticity in, then basically your waterproofing won't be able to stretch as much before it punctures, I would say. So it's actually quite a play between these two properties. And generally, the higher your tensile strength is, the lower your elasticity, or I would call it elongation. So yeah, it is really a play between these two properties, among many others.
So generally, such technical information are normally very much interested by retail owners and developers and whatnot, right? Mm. So, I also came across like Shopee, Lazada, they sell like cans, right?
Yeah.
The kind of spray that looks freaking amazing, where there's like a crack and then they just spray on top of it like foam like that and then it
Yeah.
just sticks. How can we justify the ability of that kind of waterproofing from your point of view? I'm not doubting its effect. Maybe it might last a day or two also,
Yeah.
but logically, does it work?
I mean, there are a lot of videos like that lah. Like like it is like a wonder product. But I think a lot of things, yeah, you can take it with a pinch of salt lah. Basically, for construction materials, usually in a general sense, what you pay is what you get. Yeah. So I mean, between brands and stuff like that, there's of course certain percentage of difference in terms of costing, for example. But generally, that's what I believe lah. Even if you're talking about foam, for example, I mean, I know a lot of people, when it's leaking, basically they just go there and do some injection with PU foam. So basically, PU foam is, for those who are not familiar, when it comes in contact with water, it will foam up. So it kind of blocks off the water. But even foam itself has different grades, and you have cheap ones in the market where after foaming up, it will shrink over time.
Right.
Yeah, and you have ones that are really good. So that's why a lot of people say injection foam is only a temporary measure, or injection itself is a temporary measure. But it really depends on the contractor that you are.
And the material that you're getting, right?
Do they know how to properly do injection? So, for example, there are a lot in the market now that they go by how many holes
For
they
injection,
drill.
right.
Yeah, but how many packers they put in, right? So maybe one packer is like, I don't know what, 20, 50 ringgit or something like that. And so they just drill as many as they can. But those contractors that really, really know how to do injection, they wouldn't they may not need that many packers, and they will know the right distances to do it, the right angles to drill in, and so on. So at the end of the day, it's not just about what materials you use, but whether you are engaging someone that knows how to use it. And I wouldn't say that there is a good I wouldn't demonize any particular material. There's just appropriate materials for appropriate areas. Yeah.
Like how you guys are working towards like not transforming in a way. You guys are working towards using different type of approach in material, in chemicals in the industry. And there's definitely like contractors who are very much accustomed to the legacy materials that they've been using for the last 20, 30 years. So it was like, it works, right? So what are challenges like you see in terms of tackling that? Because you're often being sometimes introduced to the project by an architect or sometimes a developer, right? And then you may often be the NSC or the supplier to the NSC in a project. How do you tackle that sort of play and balance between different parties in the project?
I wouldn't say I would go into a project with the mindset of already changing things into something that, I don't know, maybe benefits the company more. But rather, it really depends on what the project needs. If, let's say, the contractor has a particular method that is not wrong, it's workable, but probably we don't supply the solution. I mean, we would just upfront we would
Right.
say that lah. But if a certain project where the method is not viable, so far we have not really met any projects that are overly too I would say stubborn lah, I
Stubborn,
would say.
right.
Yeah. But I think a lot of things is once you reason with them logically, I think they need a little bit of convincing in terms of like material samples, trial areas. Usually for really tricky projects, we do recommend to have a trial area first. So the contractors will understand how the product works, how it's being used, and so on, and how they can actually adjust their project schedule, maybe their work schedule accordingly. And of course, we have backing like test reports that are required by the architect or maybe the developer and so on. So I think a lot of it is it's a process. It's just a discussion process. Yeah.
Speaking of that, those projects, right? What are some of the interesting occurrences that you've actually encountered? Like, you mind sharing?
Like personally,
Personally, it could be something that, that you feel personally is a bit, hey, this is different. Like, or could be better, or could be worse. What intrigued you over the years?
I don't really have a don't really have any, but I think like personal experience, something that I always remember is going into a project site. That time I wasn't with DriTech yet, still with another company. So I think at the time maybe I still look quite young. Yeah, fresh, somewhat fresh grad, and a girl going into site. So I have met like contractors who don't even want to shake my hand because
Wow.
because they just think like it's just another girl that like maybe do sales or something like that.
Right.
So but like only after like a technical presentation, understand explaining to them and stuff like that, then only like after that, then they come and shake my hand. So I think personally those are things that I remember very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, not because I wouldn't say it's really a bad memory, but maybe just something a bit different. You know what I mean? Keeping in mind that I came into this industry about like almost 10 years ago. So I don't know, maybe feminism wasn't that wasn't
People are
that
not
big
that
of a
woke yet,
norm.
lah.
Yeah, people not that woke yet. So yeah. But I think things are very different now compared to last time. I can see younger people in the industry more. So I think the mindset has also changed a little bit. Lah.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm, mm, mm. And also, of course, the previous generation has slowly taken a step back,
Yeah,
taking a
probably.
back seat or whatnot. I
Probably.
mean, from your perspective, it's interesting in a way that maybe different people might take it differently. Because I myself joined the industry when I was like 22, 23, right? Had to go site meetings, chair meetings sometimes, do minutes. You just have to deal with it in a like super open mind. Like even you get scolded, I also don't know. I have to just smile at him only. And even though like I was the project architect,
Yeah.
then you don't have the qualifications and the knowledge. Everyone else has like 10, 20, 30x more experiences, right? I think they're just books where you just gotta find your way to flip it, right? So I think like I've always been sharing my team that the best thing you can learn is really on site with these guys. They can tell you the best things, right?
Yeah.
But of course,
Is this a two-way thing? Like, can I ask you questions as well?
yeah, of course lah.
I don't know whether this is appropriate question, but maybe Avi can cut it off if it's not
Yeah.
lah. Have you ever encountered like in any projects? Because like last time you used to be working with large architect firm, right? Or and so on. You have done a few projects. Have you ever encountered things like people offering you under table money and like bribes, stuff like that? Because
No.
that's what a lot of people have this impression about the construction industry, right?
Oh, okay. I think that's something really, really interesting to talk about. No, maybe my pangkat was too low. But the best they could do was they were offering me to go for lunch for sure, makan makan, and every so now and then there will be like this hint from these contractors to say, hey, do you wanna go have a beer? But obviously the beer does not just come with beer lah. There'll be like more to it, and you can kind of sense it. So they're just like testing. If it works for you, then they definitely will want you on board to do that with them lah. So those are the most that I've actually encountered. But I learned it from my senior that during running the projects, he never ever goes lunch with contractors as much as he could lah. Unless being like sort of instructed or invited by the client or the developer. I think probably from now I look back, it's kind of one way how he draws the line in the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boundaries.
Yeah. So, I mean, one very interesting encounter that I actually had was someone actually died at site, right? So something fell on him, like a
Oh.
concrete slab fell on him. I wasn't informed about it. So there was one morning I attended the site meeting. I was told not to enter the site. They said, oh, let's go yum cha first. That yum cha went on for 2 hours. I was like, guys, let's go for meeting. But it never happened. So after that, they had to tell me, it was like, look, actually, they're carrying out some sort of 打斋. They got the monk from the temple and all to do some
rituals.
rituals, right? Yeah, for that.
Ah,
And
okay.
obviously, when that happens, you know the site will be closed,
Yeah, yeah.
right? For a very long period of time. I think then who's gonna bear the LAD, right? Back to the contractor because of safety precautions, right? Yeah. So that speaking of safety precautions, if you don't mind me adding, I was at TR 118 like last month, and there was this one big photo of this worker not latching his harness onto the safety line, and then there was a photo of him, and then they put it up there and say like, anyone that commits this sort of crime, you will be banned from site. So I think they seem to take it really, really seriously, lah.
Yeah, I think over the years, like the past 10 years, we can see a lot more of awareness like in construction sites basically on health and safety and the environment. There are more awareness of green materials and so on. So I think Malaysia is not the best in terms of HSE at site, but I can see the effort lah. Yeah.
When you spoke about greens, um, what's your take on it from your point of view, from a waterproofing point of view?
I think, a lot of people talk about like circular materials nowadays, right? Like things that can, degrade and then go back into the environment and it's like a circular thing, but maybe not as suitable yet in terms of material technology to replace totally for construction chemicals. But I think there's a lot of R&D being done by various companies to go solventless, more water-based materials, materials that are more durable. So not necessarily water-based materials are the best for the environment, but maybe something that is much more durable and protects your structure for a longer time. So those things might have actually a better impact to the environment itself. So yeah, I think it really depends project by project basis, but there's definitely a lot of effort in the industry to materials technology industry, I would say.
Are there any sort of environmental bodies that govern this, construction industry, especially from the chemical point of view?
I
Because I
think
understand, if I may add, is that I've been seeing also cement like YTL, they are trying to play a part in this whole ESG movement. How do you, because concrete has been like the most heavily used material in construction, right? Then probably next you have chemical and boards. How do you see that? Is it difficult?
I think it's impossible to totally eliminate
Right.
cementatious materials or concrete in a construction. Even if, let's say, you're using a metal structure, you are bound to have usually concrete somewhere, somehow. But of course, there are like replacement, cement replacement like fly ash and so on, but only to a certain percentage. I think for materials itself, yes, we need to be responsible, move the technology forward. But I think not just that, but the designers, how they can come into play is by designing structures that last. So rather than structures that only can last like maybe five years, then you need to do a major repair again, then you need to cast more things again. But rather, design something that's 20, 30 years.
Longevity.
Yeah. I think that also plays a role in moving towards a greener direction. Just for example, like infrastructures like bridges, I'm not sure whether you're familiar with concrete deterioration,
No,
like
I don't.
carbonation
I'm
and
not.
so on. So basically,
share.
concrete, a more technical view of it is it will degrade because of attack from like carbon dioxide, fluoride ions, and other type of chemicals. So carbon dioxide is basically in the air. So we cannot really eliminate that, but we do have anti-carbonation coatings so that it blocks off the carbon dioxide from going into the concrete to attack it to deteriorate. So things like that will help your structure last much longer and prevent repair works needed to be done. So it's not just about green, but it's also about being cost effective in the long run. So Malaysia spends quite a lot of funds on repairing, diagnosing your infrastructure and then repairing them. which is why I think you can see some of the more recent infrastructure projects, they do have anti-carbonation coating specified inside by
Right.
JKR. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay, so this is a very interesting point, right? Okay, number one, when it deteriorates, what happens to it? Does it get brittle? Does it weaken the integrity of it?
It, more microscopic
Yeah, from a
into it.
more
Yeah.
microscopic view.
So the carbon dioxide goes in, and basically your concrete will reduce its alkalinity. So concrete is very alkaline, and you have steel rebars inside basically, right?
Yeah.
So the steel rebars, when they come into contact with, why steel and concrete is, we call it like a perfect marriage, is because they complement each other in terms of compressive strength and tensile strength. But steel is always susceptible to rusting, corrosion. So when
Even if it's like super coated with like concrete, like they're within this whole slab.
well, I mean, it delays the process,
Oh.
but because of the carbon dioxide, right, it reduces the alkalinity of concrete. So then it makes it easier for the rebars to become corroded. So
Oh.
when rust forms, basically rust is it has a larger volume, so it kind of pushes the concrete out. So you get things like cracks, spalling, and eventually, if it's really really worst case, then you might get your whole structural failure. So yeah, these are kind of like the side effect of it lah.
Right. Please. I thought you got question. Cikgu, I tanya.
But then our topic stray very far leh. I thought suppose waterproofing only.
Yeah, it's okay. You can answer what?
I understand.
Not bad. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So now you spoke about like coatings, right? You did coatings for the bridges, a lot of infra, right? And this is something that JKR has taken note of and things that they know that is important. So is this coating any different from paint that it's normally done? Because I like how you brought this up because during the 90s, 2000s, right, I always noticed that bridges will have like stain across, the typical concrete stain from rainwater and whatnot. And now they are actually quite nice. They're like really nice light gray. Are those the coatings that we speak of, or are they just typical paint?
Of course, I can't say for
Can't say
sure
for
that each project is, but usually it will be the anti-carbonation coating. It's different from regular paint in the sense that it can block off. There's a lot of actually it's a very stringent test process, and JKR has also done a very good job in like setting what is the test criteria, what kind of requirements the coating needs. So you not just about carbon dioxide diffusion, but like for example water vapor, is it a breathable coating or not? Chloride ion, does it block chloride ions and so on? So chloride ions is something also a bit more vital if you are by the seaside.
Right.
Yeah, projects there. So yes, usually if you see like for example the MRT coatings, yeah, so those are anti-carbonation coatings.
Right. And they don't only happen on the structure. Do you do it anywhere else? Like speaking of coating for buildings, like exterior coatings. So aside from just protecting concrete, do you have then coating for protection for steel?
Yeah.
Roof steel.
Yeah, we do. So basically
metal roof
different type of structures, then we will have different type of protective coatings for them lah. Also depending on what is how critical is it, I would say. If for example if the roof is very easily accessible or the building is very easily you can access it very easily, then usually maybe you can actually opt for something not so high performance maybe. But if for example the building is like a really really tall high rise, if you want to recoat it, it's going to be very hard, then we would recommend to use a good one so that you can last very long. Otherwise every time you recoat is another cost going in, and not just about cost but complexity of carrying out the project itself. So usually for us what we do is I would say our solutions are quite customized for DriTech. People come to us with a particular project with the particular requirements and conditions, and we actually give a proposal based on that. So it's not just like I have this waterproofing, you use here, you use here, you use here lah.
Right.
That kind of thing. Yeah, we really want to understand what you need first. What is the conditions like before we actually, recommend something. So sometimes people get annoyed because I ask a lot of questions before
Right.
even giving them a product or a price. But for us, we want to be a bit more responsible, or take the extra step to really understand more.
Let's talk about like this one thing that most people are aware of, epoxy. Right? The closest to epoxy that everyone knows is something that you can get off the shelf in a hardware store. And very often, if you want to keep the budget low, you rent a shop lot or an office. If the flooring is smooth enough, seemingly no cracks and whatnot, people will apply epoxy. And that's where most likely things will happen after 6 to 9 months, right? You mind sharing a little bit more on what people should really know about epoxy?
Okay, the first thing,
Okay, so
misconception.
let me also add on another
Yeah.
layer of information if that might help. Very often we go towards using epoxy not so much of because we want it to be food grade level, but it's more like just cost consciousness because it's cheap. Then how do you see that?
I mean, it really depends on your expectation, right?
Okay.
So if you are going in because of budget constraint, you just want it to look a bit more presentable than a concrete floor, then I mean there's nothing wrong. If you can deal with the fact that the risk that it might peel off in certain parts, maybe 6 to 12 months, or sometimes if it's a very high traffic area, maybe even 3 months. If you're able to accept that, then there's nothing wrong with getting epoxy off the shelf. But just another note, misconception a lot of people have is that epoxy can be used externally, but epoxy is actually not UV resistant entirely. So you might
Okay.
get some color changes as
Right.
well if you get into contact with UV.
It powders up, right?
Yeah, it powders up, chalks up, and it
Chalks
turns
up.
a bit more yellow, like it goes towards a yellower shade.
Right.
Yeah, so if you're able to accept that, like color is not like, the main, there's no particular branding requirement for your retail shop, for example, then yeah, go ahead. But I mean, of course, if you, let's say, you have a higher requirement, then there are different grades of epoxy as well, and different type of system build-ups as well. So it will depend on case by case basis, I would say.
What do you mean by system build-ups?
So for example, if it's on concrete, then we usually have a primer. If it's at the ground floor or a basement floor, we will need at least 5 mm epoxy mortar.
5 mm.
Yeah, to block off the moisture first before you apply epoxy. Because what happens is epoxy is it's a reactive chemical. So you always have part A, part B, and then you mix it together, right? Then a chemical reaction forms. So it's not really a breathable coating. So if you have any moisture coming through, it may bubble up. So you will see like how come after I apply I see a lot of like bubbles here and there. So this is one of the reasons.
Right.
Yeah. So these are things that
Very likely it happens on ground
yeah.
floor.
Yes, ground floor and basements.
Okay.
So epoxy mortar is quite a large cost, I would say, in comparison to just applying 2 coats of epoxy. So I understand a lot of retail owners, they don't go for it. They have some certain budget that they need to keep in, but I mean, if they are able to accept that possibility of peeling off and so on, then yeah.
Understand. Understand. So then that leads to the next discussion of food grade sort of flooring, because we worked on the project where we did a vet clinic back in 2017 or something like that, and that's when I started learning about like the different type of flooring, and then you gotta have angle filler because you don't want bacteria to get stuck in those corners. So how are those different from the typical ones we use outside the tile flooring? And for food grade as well. Because you mentioned UV resistant, so that's one side.
I would say food grade, I wouldn't really call it food grade, but rather the one that is commonly used in the F&B manufacturing
Right.
industry. Mainly because if you understand the process of their production floor, usually because of this bacteria requirement, they may do steam cleaning. So the floor is subjected to very, very high temperatures. So because of that, we have different type of flooring chemical base. We call it PU screed. So those are able to take up higher temperatures. It can withstand. Whereas epoxy, maybe if you go for regular epoxy, maybe at most 50, 60 to 80, depending on the grade. If you go for even higher grade, maybe 100 plus. But that one will be very expensive. So when we say food grade, we actually more likely we mean something that is able to withstand the F&B process at the production floor.
It's not so much of the chemical that it lets out. Would that be a concern?
Unless it's in direct contact with food,
Oh, right,
which most of
okay.
the time it isn't, we don't really do much about. We don't really. I don't know the word for it.
Right.
We don't really take into consideration contact with food.
I see,
Yeah.
I see. Okay, okay. Let's talk about the last thing. Things that something that is a bit more hot in the city right now, where people play a lot of pickleball, right? Sports flooring.
Yeah.
What's your take on different types of sports flooring and how it's being done? What are some of the keynotes that we should take note of? Let's say if I'm gonna have like an open warehouse, flat cement flooring. What are the steps that's required to do this sports flooring?
Well, if you're going for just like a coating, yeah, so basically the first thing that you need to consider is, first of all, whether the material is breathable. If it's not breathable like epoxy, again, you need that epoxy mortar. Second of all would be the slip. So when you're playing sports and stuff like that, if it's too slippery, then there's bound to be injury. So these are like public areas, flooring for public areas, which we usually put in a little bit more thought. So it will be best to have a coating that is for that purpose.
So to control the slip is where you put in the silica sand.
Yeah.
Is that what you call it?
Yeah, so we usually, for sports flooring, we usually pre-blend it in so that it's a consistent, you get a consistent finish, I would say, after you apply it. But there are also certain designers or project owners that they want to control their own slip. So usually they'll have a trial area, like with different ratios of dry quartz added in to
And that's something you guys
achieve.
can do as well.
Yeah. So I would say mainly for sports floor, these two items that I can think of at the moment.
How about leveling of it? Like, so
Leveling.
most of the time it's not that level because once you have the court,
Yeah.
you don't want to have undulation and whatnot.
Yeah. But I mean, again, this goes back to your expectation. If you're willing to spend in more money to do the leveling first before you apply the coating, I mean, of course that's good. But if you're, for example, just now you mentioned a large warehouse, the cost to do the leveling, I think itself is already quite a big budget as compared to whatever you're going to spend for the coating. So at the end of the day, it really, really depends.
When leveling, right, does it mean it's the same as self-leveling compound that is used for vinyl, carpet?
If it depends how undulated your surface is.
Right, okay.
If you can
2-3 mm, if it
Yeah,
covers, then it's sufficient.
then probably yes, you can cover. But if it's anything like 5 to 10 mm, if you use a self-leveling compound, it's probably going to be very, very expensive.
Right.
Yeah. So then you may probably need to do topping up instead.
Which
or,
is with
either, for example, concrete topping up.
right.
Yeah. But again, if it's a large area, if you really want to control the level, yeah, it's also quite challenging. So again, goes back to the contractor's experience and expertise, I would say.
And based on what you guys recommend as well, lah. So last question, lah, based on this, because I'm quite interested to understand if there is this empty lot, right? And assuming that you're gonna put on a layer of self-leveling compound, and then after that another layer of sports floor, sports, what do you call that material?
Coating?
Coating,
Yeah.
right? Will it, because there are so many layers on it, will it detach in certain ways? Because there might be crack that happens under the concrete cement, and then it affects the self-leveling, because self-leveling might be brittle as well. Would it affect that, or do you need some sort of fiber across?
Well, it depends on the grade of your self-leveling.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's one thing. If you want it to be completely no cracks, I would say it's very hard for anyone to give a guarantee that there's 100% going to be no cracks. If you want, you can actually fiber reinforce your flooring coating so that it bridges the cracks a little bit more. But of course, it is a little bit more detailed in terms of the work required lah. So we've actually done something like that,
Yeah.
floor repair for a tennis court. There are a lot of cracks, but there was no budget to recast the whole structure itself, the whole floor itself. So we did a fiber reinforced floor coating for it. So it was about, I think, maybe 2 years easily. Yeah, when I went back, the cracks were still being covered up
So
by
when you do repair, it's kind of like the entire one big part is chipped off, cement cracked off.
I wouldn't say cracked off, but like there were multiple large cracks.
Right.
Yeah, so basically we need to patch the cracks first, fix it, fiber reinforce the cracks before we fiber reinforce the whole sports floor coating.
So anyway, if you want to do it in different colors, it's doable as well.
Yeah.
Lah. Oh, that's great. That's great.
Are you opening a pickleball court?
No, man, I have a lot of inquiries.
Oh,
Yeah. So it's something that we would want to have discussion with the client as well to kind of advise them whether if what sort of like work is needed to this space before you take on. Because like what you said, depending on the quality of the floor, you might have to spend a lot more. Then does it make sense to the ROI to the business later on? Yeah. So because one of the pickleball court called ESM and UM, they were basically just mosaic tiles, like the swimming pool deck tiles, but it's a bit this big, so
Okay.
it has this open area. What they did is just they poured mortar on it, like very thin mortar, and then they just colored it. So it's actually the ball can actually like bounce sideways at different levels.
okay,
So if you're very sensitive to it, it's not the so-called super flat that is required of these courts lah. Yeah. But it's something very big in the market right now. There's a huge requirement over it lah. That's the reason why I wanted to understand more of it. Yeah.
So if it's a refurbished project, for example, cases like that,
Yeah.
usually we will recommend to do a trial area first. If they are able to accept that, then only proceed with the entire area. Yeah. Because I think refurbishment projects are much more challenging and trickier compared to new projects, like newly built structures.
So the best surface to work with is always just pure RC
Yeah.
because you don't exactly know what the cement screed
Yeah.
compound is, right?
Yeah. Because the cement screed could be something very weak, like with a lot of sand, very little cement ratio.
Yeah.
So those will be very, very weak.
I came to learn about that when I worked on this project back then. Even the wheels from chairs, right? Over time, the wheel can just dig up the cement, and then the sand just comes off
Yeah, yeah,
over
yeah.
and over again.
Yeah.
So there's like this little hole in the cement flooring.
Yeah. So like for example, right, things like this, we will actually specify in our proposals like what's the ratio of cement to sand that they should use for your screeding, because we usually recommend 1:3 ratio. But like at site, some of them they mix up to 1:9, for example. So
So
a lot of sand.
1 cement to 3 parts of sand.
Yeah. Yeah.
1 to 9 is ridiculous.
Yeah, but there are
Right.
contractors that do that lah. I mean,
Right.
it'll be much cheaper if it's a bigger area, but it's gonna be something that's very weak.
Okay, okay. Cool. Right. Learn a lot. I think we should definitely catch up on more details on it, more at site,
Yeah, more
then
excited.
continue our site video.
Okay.
All right. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming.
Thank you for having me.
Okay.
Okay, Kao Team. But we didn't talk